What's wrong with Saint Petersburg, the capital of Russian Empire? Let's start with the name. Perhaps everyone in Russia knows the muddled history of Peter the Great, but few know that Petros, in one of the Cyrillic languages of the Indo-European family, means stone, and then Petrograd is not named after its founder, but after the material of which it was made. If the official information is to be believed, the city was founded in 1703, in the worst possible location in the region, a quaking swamp on the bank of a huge puddle, 1.5 meters deep. What could be more romantic? Only a raging river, carrying its waters through the swamp into the puddle at several meters per second, surging with every little blow of a strong headwind. Almost every year, often closer to January, it floods all the frogs to hell. That's really rare luck. A step to the left, a step to the right, and you're already on solid, dry ground where the regular rising waters don't reach. But Peter did not look for easy ways. It was decided to lay the basement of the buildings deep underground. So our young Tsar changed stormy river Neva, build houses, canals, palaces, churches, the whole city, builds fortresses, forts, waterways with locks, under the nose of the greatest enemy of that time, Sweden. And all this is 120 kilometers from Novgorod, the nearest Russian outpost, and it is 30-40 hours on foot without stopping, having an arsenal of carts and hand tools and practically without roads. Yes, he is a real hero. No one had done it on such a scale before him. He was the last Tsar of Russia and the first emperor of the Russian Empire. When I ask people how many monuments to Peter, in their opinion, have been erected in Saint Petersburg, all as one answer there must be a great many. So let's figure out why there were only 2 monuments of this hero in his city until the 20th century. Elizabeth, the daughter, placed none. The first, the Copper Rider, was erected by his grandson's wife, called Catherine, but really named
Sophie Auguste Friederike von Anhalt-Dornburg,
in 1782. 57 years after the emperor's death. In the stunning sculpture, mounted on a pedestal weighing more than 1,500 tons, the total carrying capacity of 27 quarry trucks or 115 heavy-duty tractor trucks, the head of the rider contrasts sharply with the rest of the composition. It is written that the head was completed by an apprentice, after the master was forced to leave Russia. When he left, he took with him all the drawings and technical calculations. That is why that head looks a bit unnatural. The second of the established monuments was cast as early as 1847, 22 years after Peter's death. After that, for 35 years the chasing and correction of minor flaws in the casting were done. In the end, his grandson's wife could not find a place to put it in the whole city. She gifted it to her lover, and he put the monument in a barn, and it was forgotten for many more years. And only in 1800, 3/4 of a century after his death, a second monument to the last Tsar and the first emperor of the Russian Empire was solemnly erected in the stone city. And for another 100 years after that, no one decorated the public places of the stone city with the figure of the founder. Only in 1875 there was a bust erected to commemorate the 150th anniversary of death. No, not his birthday, it was to commemorate the day of his death. Only in the early 20th century, just before the First World War, interest to the person of Peter the Great grows sharply and several more monuments appear. They are erected by the great-great-great-great-grandson Nicholas II. Also he renamed Saint Petersburg to Petrograd. Petra is Latin for rock, Petros is Greek for stone. Rock and stone is the main material of the builders of Petrograd. Incredibly hard material, very difficult to work with. 1 cubic meter weighs 2.8 tons, as much as 2 light trucks, and it is impossible to transport this cube in such a truck. It twice exceeds the allowable norms. At the beginning of the era of the camera, the stone city is encased in granite all over the center. Counting the length of the canals and the river Neva, we get about 55 kilometers, that is 110 kilometers of granite embankment. We see 3 meters of masonry above the water and add another 3 meters down. It is 660,000 square meters of the highest quality granite cladding. If we take the minimum thickness of 60 centimeters, and in many masonry it is much thicker, it turns out 400,000 cubic meters of granite, weighing more than 1 million tons. It is a complete mystery how such large quantities of these blocks were extracted, processed, delivered and laid. The city lasted 200 years, or 73,000 days, until 1900. Even if we imagine that work went on every day, with no days off, let's take one day for the needs of the embankment alone. To cut the Petra rock in the nearest quarry into a Petras stone, level and grind it perfectly, deliver Petras from Petra to Petrograd. Finally, to lay the blocks butt to butt without using mortar in the amount of 15 tons, means it was necessary to process for the construction of the embankment alone 15 tons of granite every day for 200 years, without interrupting either for war or winter, or for anything at all. And that's not counting a single building. Not the Hermitage, not St. Isaac's Cathedral, not thousands of other buildings and columns. Here is a comparison of the masses of some elements in terms of heavy-duty tractor trucks. Such truck can carry 13 tons of cargo. Under the dome of St. Isaac's Cathedral, at a height of 43 meters, there is a colonnade. Each column weighs 64 tons. For its transportation it is necessary to involve 5 heavy-duty tractor trucks. Even the famous Bellas cannot pull such a load. Each lower column weighs 116 tons, only 9 heavy-duty tractor trucks can carry such weight. The total weight of the entire cathedral is 600,000 tons. To deliver it to the construction site would require more than 46,000 heavy-duty tractor truck deliveries of construction materials. But in the 19th century, the main transport was a cart, and that weight is only distributed on over 800,000 carts. 72 carts every day for 30 long years. 7 carts of stone would have to be unloaded every hour of the day, in any weather, in the absence of roads. It is also noteworthy that chronicles indicate that 400,000 people were involved in the construction of St. Isaac's Cathedral and 100,000 of them died. Red Square of Moscow holds 80,000 people shoulder to shoulder. During the Minsk protests you could see an avalanche of people. Can you imagine? All of them were sent to the construction site for 30 years, where they were put to death, and society quietly accepted this norm. If we really believe the official history, we will have to recognize our ancestors as monsters. On the one hand there will be rampant monstrous, criminal cruelty and impunity, similar to the cannibals, when from one construction site alone, in the center of the capital, about 300 corpses of dead workers were dumped into the river every month for 30 years. On the other hand, we will see the same monstrous obedience. Knowing the history of the revolution of 1917, when all the ogres were shot in the back of the head, we realize that we are the descendants of these same peasants, who by the tens of thousands were killed on the construction sites of the religious buildings and luxurious palaces for the nobility and could not do anything about it, not even trying. This image of the ancestors, together with other strange and contradictory images, has been absorbed by the last few generations in school as the ultimate truth, without being able to analyze or object to it. But what if we imagine that there was no such thing? That people in sandals in the first half of the 19th century did not build St. Isaac's Cathedral with hammers. The stone city stood on this spot long ago. Swamp was the name given to the silt brought in by the recent global flood. Peter had no choice where and how to build. There was a choice only how to lie. The new government gradually and inevitably rewrote history, educated writers and poets, tightened censorship, controlled all printed information flow and periodically edited it. Let us imagine that all the power of the state machine was, for one reason or another, put in this direction. The picture of the chief architect Auguste Montferrand, who sketched the production of the columns for St. Isaac's Cathedral, shows the processing of stone in the open air in the quarry in a primitive manner, without the aid of machinery, with a hammer on granite. I have shown what it is in several films. I will only tell you that it is highly unproductive work, because there is a palpable difference in hardness between granite and modern iron. and it is not at all in favor of the tool. Steel that even approaches the hardness of quartzite in some way, even today, costs a lot, while at that time it had not been produced yet. For example, a high-carbon, double-hardened, one-piece geological hammer costs around $100. But even this hammer will not last long, melting in sparks on collision with quartzite, one of the main components of granite. The quartzite splits on impact on an arbitrary trajectory, like glass. In the Hermitage, where perfectly polished natural stone surfaces show no traces of tools or abrasives, there are items of the same era and earlier, made entirely of quartzite, and yet their geometry is perfect, flawless and more precise than the body of a new Rolls-Royce. Is it possible to polish a stone by hand until it is a mirror? Of course it is. Is it possible to create and maintain the correct geometry of a product of the most complex shape with primitive tools? Probably, yes. Is it possible to do both at the same time? No, this is absolutely impossible in the case of stone, even nowadays, using the technical arsenal of the 21st century. So what are these dwarfs in identical hats doing, in such detailed Montferrand lithographs? Dwarfs, because the diameter of the large columns of St. Isaac's Cathedral does not exceed 180 centimeters. This is approximately equal to the average height of an average person, but much taller than a man with a hammer. Even Montferrand can see this. If you take it apart, I personally see in the picture two cylindrical billets, behind which there is a long wooden platform, behind which there is a gap in front of the quarry wall. From there a man climbs up the platform by a ladder. And where do these people hit with their hammers? Into the void, into each other, against the table. And this one is polishing, with a rag, with sand? These are the columns, which don't have any dents or scratches, but each one has typical lathe marks. It is this kind of rippling on the surface that proves the use of such technology in the production of such massive products of complex geometric shape. However, how the perfect polishing accuracy was controlled remains an unsolvable mystery. The only thing we can say for sure is that it is absolutely impossible to achieve such a result with a hammer or a rag. The Japanese are one of the best examples of painstaking craftsmanship from ancient times to the present day, but we will not see anything like that among the Japanese products of that era. And, in general, what distinguishes manual work is the fact that we always see traces of it, while machining is the mass production of the same type of high-quality parts on which traces are either absent or barely discernible, often with the use of high-precision electronic equipment. The electronic microscope also failed to shed light on the secret of the rag from the 19th century. It shows many tiny scratches of equal width and depth, not only running parallel to each other, but also in many different directions. Sometimes one scratch protrudes from another in a T-shape. All this cannot be compared with the technologies, tools and machines which the official history has dumped on us without the slightest hesitation, and that from the point of view of its adherents does not cause the slightest doubt and does not require any proof. The story of the waterways, hundreds of kilometers of which were dug with a difference of less than 100 years, also requires separate attention. The first one was routed by Peter I in the early 18th century, but over the years it has apparently overgrown, and it became inconvenient, and therefore his great-great-grandson, Alexander I, just before the war with Napoleon, quickly dug a second canal nearby. No, he did not bother with clearing and widening the existing waterway. It is somehow not imperial petty, but he managed to leave no trace of the excavated soil and even went through huge lakes. Yes, just like that, leaving a neat edge over the surface of the water, preserving the exact straight geometry, and all this with carts and wooden shovels. In another video, it was perfectly showed that the pedestal under the monument to Minin and Pozharsky, whose manufacturing process in Saint Petersburg and delivery to Moscow was vividly described in history, contrary to it, turned out to be hollow inside. If even the history of the House of Romanov also turns out to be hollow, Petrograd will still rightfully bear its proud name, Stone City. I have not mentioned a tenth of the wonders of Stone City, neither the Babelov Bath, nor the Alexander Column, nor the gates of an unknown military unit in a deserted alley in the center, nor the dump of pedestals in the Peterhof bushes, nor the fantastic granite forts sticking out of the waters of the Gulf of Finland, nor any of 44 palaces, built and rebuilt several times in this region. But I am convinced that even this scanty set of these facts should raise many questions and encourage a closer and unbiased study of the history of Saint Petersburg, Russia and all the rest of the world. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to your comments and discussion on this topic. Send your observations to our resources listed in the description to this video, and join our investigation on social media. Have a great time.